Yes, yes.
The 2011,
Yeah.
the maximum Japanese.
Yeah, okay. Japan.
But this year we have 7 more.
Yeah, yeah. But last year and 2011 we had 1 US.
Really? So do you want me to put this up on the...
No, I don't want it
No, right?
to go anywhere until after the discussion.
Yeah. Right. No, because you asked for it. No, the C4 one, did you want me to do anything with that? Did you want me to do anything with the C4 one? The C4 France, saying the Switzerland is actually not,
I was going to just let that sit.
Okay. So I've changed the Ireland.
Right.
But this one I wasn't sure whether you wanted me to do it or not.
Basically, you could ask, I always let it sit. If you ask the question, we'll fix it.
Okay.
I can't do a bloody thing.
Yes, I would like to make an announcement.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Okay, I'll forget it. Some housekeeping matters. Okay, tea time is over, but before we start the business, there's a housekeeping announcement from Alinka, so I'll hand over to her.
I have 2 important announcements to make to you. We prepared a timetable with the departures for Friday and Saturday. After Saturday, we are not taking anybody to the airport. Everybody takes a taxi or goes in his way. Just to tell you, if you, after Saturday, go to somewhere else in Brazil and your plane leaves from Congonhas, Congonhas is in São Paulo, is quite close, and the taxi is around 35, 40 reais only. So there is no worry about going to Congonhas. Well, I would like to ask you, we prepared the timetable. It is on the table outside to the right from here now when you go out. And I ask you to verify if the date and the hour is correct. Because if there is any change, I took into account all the emails I received about changes. But if there are changes which are not on this paper, please, there is a pen, correct, and then we will include the corrections in the timetable. So we will have vans leaving from the hotel and also maybe from here. This we have to see exactly, to go to Guarulhos, Cumbica, which is the international airport. As now you saw that the traffic was very quiet because today is a holiday, so people are or at home or they have traveled. So before we said you need 5 hours between leaving and your departure of the plane. I think 4 hours is enough now. It's not necessary 5 hours. So you can calculate in which group you are, and then you tell us if you take this van, and details can be discussed with me and with Rosie, okay? But I ask you first to look, and then we will make the real schedule of the vans. This is the first. The second is the dinner, the restaurant where we go tonight is very close from here, from the campus. So the buses will leave from here to the restaurant at 7:30. If somebody is going back to the hotel, then he can go at 8 o'clock. We will begin the dinner, more or less. These people can go directly to the restaurant. I will write on the on a paper, also put on the table the exact name and address of the restaurant that you copy, and you show this to the cab driver and you can go directly. Or you come back here and you take the bus from here to the restaurant. The bus does not go back at 7 o'clock to the hotel. This is the announcement. Okay? It's clear, everybody? Okay, thank you.
Good. Thank you very much, Alinka, for that and for arranging the transfers for Friday and Saturday. Before I move on, I should tell you that one resolution got dropped off my list of slides, and I haven't had a chance to retrieve it yet, but I will try to do so and put it up a bit later on. So we come to the next item on the agenda, which is the renominations to the slate of commissions and executive council. And we're down to stage 2. So that's now today. Leaders of country delegations whose nominee was not put on the slate may move a motion to put that nominee on the slate. And this must be supported by one other country delegation. If it is, that nominee is added to the slate. And then tomorrow, where we find there are now more than 14 people on the slate for a commission, we will have a ballot. The process, and let me just remind you of the distribution of countries and shares and Council's recommendations. I could have taken that column out about Commission recommendations. So, for example, Brazil has 8 shares, 11 people are recommended from Brazil to go on commissions. Canada is in a similar situation. China, Beijing, 15 shares and 16 on commissions. Denmark, 3 shares, 2. Poland, 4 shares, 3. And so on. Some are high, some are low. But Council, in its coming to the slates, made an attempt to even them out, but it didn't get as far as complete equality of numbers and shares. And I haven't fixed up the UK Ireland one on this one, still the one I had yesterday. So, as I said, so now to the procedure. If you wish to renominate somebody, you should raise your hand, and I will call you to speak one by one. You tell us the commission involved and the name of the person you wish to renominate. If you wish to do so, you can say in a very few words why you're proposing this renomination. After you speak, I will ask if another country wishes to support that renomination. If that's the case, details are noted, and after the meeting closes, we will put the additional nominations into the database, and I will move on to the next person wishing to make a renomination. I should go back up here and have a look at what I said happens tomorrow. This is in principle what happens tomorrow, but I should also tell you what happened in one case in 2014. In one case, there was a renomination, and between that renomination and the time for the ballot the following day, the leader of the delegation from another country with a person on that commission offered to withdraw their person from the commission. And that swap of people was acceptable to the chair of the commission, and so we did not go through to a ballot. The swap happened without a ballot. So I mentioned to you that in some cases that that could happen, and we may get an additional nomination, but not in the end need to conduct a ballot. Okay, so I'm in your hands. Does anyone wish to make renominations? We need a microphone down here.
Okay, I'm Guglielmo Fortunato. I'm the Italian delegate. Well, Italy holds 12 shares, and there are 10 Italian candidates in the slates. By comparing these numbers with those of other countries, it is evident that Italy is underrepresented. Indeed, there are several countries holding less shares but with more candidates than Italy in the slates. I find this rather unfair, and in order to rebalance this situation, I would like to renominate two excellent Italian scientists, in particular Maria Antonietta Ricci for C10. She is an expert in structure and dynamics of matter, and you can find more detail on his CV on the webpage of IUPAP. And Maurizio Lontano for C16 plasma physics. They are both excellent scientists and well known in their respective fields.
Good.
That's it.
Thank you. I'll take them one by one. Is the renomination to C10 supported by anybody? Anyone indicate that they wish to support that renomination? So you support the renomination? Okay, good. Spain has supported that. And the renomination to C16, is that supported by another country? Okay, that's supported by France. Thank you, Lewis. So, does anyone else wish to make a renomination? Yep.
Gerd Ingold for the German delegation. I would like to renominate Dieter Zeppenfeld for C11. He's an excellent candidate who was chosen by the Committee of Elementary Particle Physics in Germany. I would like to remind you that in the last 3 years, even though Germany plays a very important role in particles and fields, there was no German delegate. That gave rise to very strong reactions of the local community. And so, since also Germany is the most important financial contributor to CERN, for example, I think it should be represented. It's quite noticeable that also UK, which is the second last contributor, is not on the committee. So you have the two largest contributors to CERN, which are not on the Committee of Particles and Fields, and I would like to ask you to reconsider that. Thank you.
Okay, good. Okay. Thank you. Is that renomination of the German nominee for C11 supported? Okay. Netherlands support. One's enough. Are there other renominations? Yep. Holland. The microphone. Behind you, please. Put your hand up, Poland. No, down here. Keep your hand up until you get the microphone.
Yes. Yesterday I mentioned the reasons why I'd like to renominate, so only just to remind that Poland has 4 shares and only 3 commissioners suggested. So I'd like to, without any introduction, to say that we've got a very good candidate for C5, which is Professor Dariusz Kaczorowski, who is his expertise in the field of this commission. And just to mention that he has also experience in IUPAP because he was the member of commission few terms ago. And also I'd like to mention that in 3 suggested commissioners, we've got 1 female, so also the gender issue is satisfied. So that's it.
Okay. Is the renomination of Poland for C5 supported? Yep. Sorry, put your placard up so I can see which country. Thank you. Hungary. Okay. Are there any further renominations? Okay, Hungary.
So I'm Sándor Kocz from Hungary, and I would like to renominate Peter Domby for C17, Laser Physics and Photonics. He is a bright young guy who has lots of international experience, and I think he will do good work in this commission. And we are also among the few countries who have less seats than shares.
Yep. Okay, so is anyone supporting the Hungary renomination for C17? That's done by China Taipei. Are there any further? Yep.
Russian Liaison Committee. I propose to include Bisikala to Commission C14. He was nominated from Liaison Committee of Russia. He is bright, young scientist. He is an astronomer.
So Russia has moved to renominate their candidate for C14. Is that supported by anybody? Hungary's doing it again. Are there any more? Yeah.
I have not a renomination, but a general comment on the balance of the countries. If we look at the chairs, we have 18 commissions and we have 60 countries in this room, and 7 chairs belong to 1 nationality, which I think is rather imbalanced for such an international organization as we are.
It is certainly true that of the chairs proposed and put on the slates, that there are 7 chairs out of 18 commissions from the USA. You need to, when you think about that, and it does look like a large fraction, we have a situation where the commissions, the current chairs of commissions were asked significantly more than a year ago to identify the people they wanted to propose as their chair and to involve them significantly in the work of the Commission. Council noted the number of chairs from the USA, but Council also did not move to make any changes to the chair nominations of the Commission, and the reason for this is that Council believes that the business of IUPAP is best served by having incoming chairs well established in the detailed work of the Commission, and therefore it decided to respect the nominations from commissions for their chairs. If you're worried about the apparent excessive representation from the USA, if you look around the room at the present chairs, they have one. This year it happens there was quite a good balance around member countries of chairs, and no member country had more than 2 chairs. If we go back one more year to 2011, Japan had 5 chairs, the UK had 4 chairs, and that raised a few eyebrows because not only because of the numbers, but because of the fact that the President and Secretary General who brought those to Council were from the UK and Japan. However, that went through. And that year, USA had 1 chair. So if we look over the 3 years at the 54 chairs in 3 years, the USA has 9, which is not such an unreasonable number. So we're looking at still fairly small statistics with 18 commissions, and on the basis of that, it's the feeling of myself and Council that this number of chairs from the USA should be regarded as a fluctuation and not a concern. Igle.
Thank you. In connection with the chairs of commissions and the fluctuations, I note that there are 2 chairs of commissions on the slate who are women, and this will be duly noted, I guess, by the gender champion. This is a bit of a pity. The Council and Commission chairs meeting was about 40% women, and I regard this as having gone back a little. There is at this stage nothing to be done, but I would like to encourage everyone in the room to make sure that scientific leadership decreases the gender gap faster than it is at the moment. Thank you.
Council did notice that and was concerned about it, but again decided not to do anything this time around. Yep.
Yes. First of all, I would like to support the 2 previous remarks, and I wanted to say also a few words about women. But still, I understand that being the secretary of the C15, we work quite hard on a scientific basis, and we try to balance our commission. Now, it's very difficult to have an overview when you are doing search of what happened in the other commission. So, I mean, to end with the results with 7 from a given country, unfortunately it's US this time, but I mean, it's not a matter of the country itself, it's a matter of one country with 7 chairs. I don't think it's a good image that we are, I mean, putting on IUPAP, whatever the country is. And since Commission has really worked very hard, I think that if we can look carefully into some of them, you can just rebalance maybe a little bit by switching the vice chair to the chair and chair to vice chair and vice versa in some of the Commission, and even promote one woman. So I am a little bit new in this business, but I was really thinking that, I mean, the Executive Council can look at that and try to make suggestions. And I am a bit surprised by the results.
The Executive Council and before it the Nomination Subcommittee looked at many things in trying to do a rebalance and made an attempt at rebalancing. The Council made some small changes to that, and those are the slates that we bring to you. I think it would be very difficult to go through another rebalancing exercise.
Yeah, I had a suggestion or a query for clarification, because I noticed that many countries are concerned about the representation being less than the number of shares that they are contributing, and it's a very valid concern, because when we go back to our, funding agencies in governments, and if the number of shares is, not commensurate with the number of members. So one of the questions I had was, why is it that the total number of positions less than the number of shares? It would have been more sensible, in my humble opinion, if it was the other way, because if you had a few more positions than the number of shares, then you could satisfy everybody who has the shares, and in addition, attract some other people who have not yet become members or not paying their shares, and then there would be an incentive for them to go back in their country and encourage their countries to become members and contribute shares. It's a way of expansion of IUPAP. And also, I feel that the work that IUPAP needs to do in terms of propagating physics in the world is so large that you should be expanding and getting more people. Why this restriction that you have only 14 per commission? Or just a query. Because, for example, now when renominations are done and the numbers go beyond 14, then, right now India is in a good position because we have 15 shares and there are 15 people on the slate. But, for example, if the elections are held and then, more than 14 have been nominated in some particular commissions, and then some of the people from India don't make it into the final thing, then I'll have a problem when I go back to my country. And then, because just last year with a lot of effort, we increased the number of shares from the earlier thing to 15, and that requires additional input from the government. But now if I go back and say that the number hasn't come up to 15, then I'll have a problem justifying the thing. So, I'm just making a request that you should consider increasing the number of positions in the commissions to be more than the number of shares. Then everybody will be satisfied, and then you'll have possibility of attracting, people from other countries.
Yeah.
I think we all have the same problem. We will be asked how many commission members we brought back. But on the other hand, as a former commission chair, I think that if you have a commission too large, it simply becomes unwieldy, and some people who are there are simply dead wood and they do nothing. We keep, I remember that we added 14th member, which should be from the developing country, but there should be some limit, because otherwise the Commission will not be efficient.
Let me comment that the Council did consider this problem when it realised that the total number of shares exceeded the number of places available on commissions, and it decided, as was just pointed out, that increasing the size of a commission makes it a little unwieldy. It also decided, looking ahead, it felt that it was not at all impossible, and possibly even likely, that at either the next General Assembly or the following General Assembly, one of our present working groups would ask to become a commission. And so that it felt that the problem may be solved in a different way than increasing the number of shares in commissions, but if we just put up with it this year. So that's the situation that was decided there.
Bernhard Nunner from Germany.
As mentioned from other delegations, there's an overrepresentation at the chairs this time from one country, and you mentioned we had the problem earlier with other countries, so there seems to be a little problem in the system. Maybe we should think of a procedure in between the nomination and the discussion with the commissions and the General Assembly. I think the Executive Council has to do more work on regulating these things.
The only way forward, as far as chairs of commissions is concerned, that makes sense to me, is to ask for nominations for chairs of commissions to be presented to around about the middle of the year before the year of the General Assembly, and this and Council gets a view of what all of the commissions are looking at, and then it can go and say for balancing, could you find a chair from this other country? And that rebalancing could occur in time for the new chair to get inducted into the workings of the Commission. If you don't do that, and then the workings of the Commission almost stop for about 12 months after the start of the new Commission, while the new chair is learning how the Commission is supposed to work and how IUPAP works. So I think we've come to the end of this discussion. We have all the nominations that we're going to get, and we have to put them on the slate and prepare for an election tomorrow. If I look back at the list of commissions involved, I am relieved that the renominations are such that we do not have two people renominated in the same commission. So the balloting, rather the counting process for the ballot will be rather easy. Good. Okay. I think we have all the renominations that we're going to get. Let me just repeat them so that we're sure that we got them right. What I have is a renomination from Italy for C10 and a renomination from Italy for C16. I have a renomination for Germany for C11, for Poland for C5, for Hungary for C17, and from Russia for C14. Do we have recorded those correctly? Good, thank you. Okay. Next item on the agenda is questions for the chairs of the working groups. Now, I did have a list of who's here, right? Not all chairs are here, but they have some representatives who are here. And the chair of Working Group 13 is unable to be here, but he told me at this stage that Peter Moore would be here and would be able to answer questions if there were any for C13. So, Peter, yeah, good. Thank you. So let me begin by asking some questions. I hope that you've read the reports of the working groups, and you might have thought of a question or two to ask yourself. When the creation of Working Group 14 was brought before the previous General Assembly, Working Group 14 on Accelerated Science, the proposal was in fact to create a commission on accelerated science, and the Council adopted the procedure that it almost always adopts when it's asked to create a new commission, which it creates a working group first. And so that's what it did. It created the working group on accelerated science. During that discussion, that was concerned because we already have our Working Group 1, which is the National Committee for Future Accelerators, that there may be some situations where we have two working groups working on the same problem. It wouldn't be the whole of either of their business, but it could be part of their business, and there could be some overlap or competition. So I'd like to ask Johan, Chair of Working Group 1, and Leah, Chair of Working Group 14, if they could tell us whether they what they are doing to make sure that the working groups don't tread on each other's toes during this process.
I would like to start first.
Right.
So thank you for the question. Of course, ICFA has a long history and many significant contributions and impact on particle accelerators for high-energy physics, and more recently for other fields of science. And therefore, Working Group 14 is going to continue to strongly support the ICFA mandate, as it is important for the field of accelerator science as a whole. Now, within Working Group 14, we're delineating the mandate and mission of ICFA and Working Group 14 in order to have clarity and greater focus for each one of us and not duplicate each other's efforts. In the meantime, we've also taken concrete steps to be informed and participate in each other's activities, and to also launch joint initiatives. And let me give you a couple of examples. So last February, ICFA had a meeting in Spain, and there was a presentation on Working Group 14 at that meeting to inform everyone about what we're doing. And last July, we had Working Group 14 had a meeting in Copenhagen, where the chairs of the ICFA Beam Dynamics panel and the ICFA panel for sustainable accelerators both participated and made presentations to our working group. And furthermore, there was a proposal from the chair of the panel on beam dynamics that we jointly organize a workshop on future light sources, and that would be a joint initiative between ICFA and Working Group 14, which of course we very gladly accepted as a great initiative. So those are just a few examples over the past year of joint activities. I do want to say for final comments, and this is, as I said, an ongoing process, but final comments are the following. ICFA appears to have a mandate that is more in some ways, it includes political aspects. For example, they invite the lab directors of the high energy physics labs or the directors of high energy physics from labs that don't have HEP directors to their meetings and take decisions about large accelerators in the worldwide scene and so on. Whereas the Working Group 14, we do not aspire to have this political aspect in our deliberations, and we're mostly purely focused on scientific, educational, and applications of accelerators for both science and society. And so that is one clear difference. Another clear difference is Working Group 14 mandate includes support of international particle accelerator conferences, and ICFA is not concerned with that.
Good. Thank you, Leah. Joachim?
Yeah, I can only confirm that what Leah said. I think in general, what we observe is there is a lot of complementarity between the two working groups, and there is at the same time overlap where we try to work together. And Leah gave, I think, a few examples of that. We are working very closely together. We are still at some points in the process of even more precisely define the way that we will work in future, that our activities will be synchronized in that, but I think we are on a very good way.
Good, thank you. I'm pleased to hear that there's been a good lot of discussion there, and look forward to it going forward. One of our working groups, Working Group 13 on the Newtonian gravitational constant, is set up very differently from many other working groups. It's set up to attack a particular problem in physics. And the report of the chair indicates that they should make significant progress on their problem over the next 6 years. So he's indicating that significant progress may even mean that the working group's job is done in 6 years. I wouldn't like to try and make decisions about that at this stage. But the question I have of Peter is to ask, what kind of precision is it hoped to be able to reach during the next period in terms of the experiments on the measurement of G? So, microphone over.
Professor. That's always a hard question to answer, but I think perhaps I should defer to Bill Phillips, who is a member of that working group and who was the IUPAP liaison from that working group, so as a more appropriate person to address the question.
Bill, if you pass the microphone along, it's probably the quickest way.
Well, certainly one of the questions you might ask is what kind of precision, or perhaps better still, what kind of accuracy one wants to achieve. But in a sense, the real mission of this working group is to try to resolve the question of why different experiments, each of which are assigning to their experiments accuracy uncertainties that are on the order of a few parts in 10 to the fifth, are nevertheless discrepant by sometimes 10 or 20 times the combined standard deviation of the experiments. So the situation is that today you have experiments that claim at the best on the order of a few parts in 10 to the fifth, but clearly we do not know what the universal gravitational constant is to that level of precision. And so the mission is to try to resolve that situation. The ultimate goal will be to achieve values of the universal gravitational constant that are as good as, to achieve a final and have confidence in a value that is as good as the best assigned uncertainties today, which is at the level of a few parts in 10 to the fifth, right, Peter? That's the very best claims. Right. So that's the hope, but the immediate goal is to find out what is wrong.
Okay, good. Thank you. So you understand a bit better now. One of the things you notice when you come here is that we have this list of conferences that Rudzani presented this morning, and all of those conferences are supported by AUPAP at the recommendation of commissions. There is one other conference that doesn't appear under Ajani's list, that happens every 3 years, the International Conference on Women in Physics, that gets a line budget item of its own of $15,000 appearing in the budget for that item every 3 years. In a sense, it's a conference supported at the request of Working Group 5, and it's got its own budget item for support that way. I notice in reports of both Working Group 14 and Working Group 13, sorry, 14 and 15, is that those working groups are talking about the organisation, the support of conferences, and it's a question partly for working groups, but partly for everybody to think about, and that is, should we open bids for conferences to working groups? If we don't, should we have another item in our budget that says working group conferences? So it's a question that I suspect the next council is going to have to grapple with, how it's going to handle this. And it's an open question to working group chairs about how they think such things should be handled. Bob.
So I'll speak on behalf of Working Group 9. We have a very close relationship with our Commission C12, which is the commission that works with conferences. I would see no reason for working groups that have that kind of close connection to have their own conferences that they delegate. But there may be working groups that don't have a close connection, which in those cases perhaps should have some power to delegate funds for conferences.
Mm-hmm. It happens that from time to time the conference that's been supported, that's of interest to the Accelerated Physics Working Group, has been supported at the request of C11, but it's not always. There are times when the conference goes on without that support being asked for. So that may be a way to do it. Yeah.
Yes, so I'm speaking here both for Affiliated Commission 2 and Working Group 11. So Working Group 11 organizes a conference that we put in for sponsorship. It meets every 2 years. It's a gravitational wave conference. Mm-hmm. And I represent AC2 on the working group. And in fact, we meet together with both our major conferences every 6 years when they coincide. So we have a close relationship, and we're very happy to act to sponsor their conference, which is our conference because it's the same field.
It's perhaps early days for Michael in thinking about how the working group and its conferences and so on might work. But the working group on soft matter physics has connections with many commissions in terms of the fact that there are many people that work on soft matter physics in various other commissions, and in C3 and in C5, C6 in particular. But so I don't know whether it's in a situation of being able to get a close connection to a commission that would put that conference together, or whether it's much better to have its own conference with a label on soft matter physics. But Michael, did you want to make any comments? I don't know. Yeah, Michael. Behind you, up there.
Well, the intent of the working group 15 was to have its own series of conferences organized by different subgroups from different areas of geographic areas. We will certainly be working with commissions within IUPAP that are closely related to the topic, different aspects of soft matter, as well as other societies like IUPAC, and I do not think that we were intending Commission 3 or other commissions to be running those soft matter conferences. So the intent was for the working group to organize the conferences and have those commissions contribute to them. How would IUPAC handle this type of sponsorship is not clear yet.
Right, so that's basically the reason for asking that question was a realization that this is something that Council is going to have to think about into the future, and I wanted to get that put into the thought processes there.
I just wanted to go back to the Accelerator Conference. One of the reasons we had made the a resolution to talk about a commission was that the Accelerator Conference, though it was sponsored by C11, was also of interest to other commissions, and it seemed that one of the ideas besides promoting accelerator education and accelerator science was to be able to support the International Conference on Accelerator Physics. And this has also been true with the Neutrino Conference that has fallen between several commissions, and we don't have a smooth procedure for how to express that joint support between the commissions. And so that's something to consider there. I think it will come up again when you're with the initiative on neutrinos.
Yeah, the neutrino panel may will come up with the same type of thing. Well, I've kept on going for about half the scheduled time on asking questions of working groups. Does anyone have questions they wish to ask? If not, it looks like we can gain a little time and move on to the next question on the agenda, which is the IXU-ISSC merger. In around about 2 weeks' time, the members of IXU and the members of ISSC will be asked to vote in favour or against a merger of the two councils. And then, if the vote is in favour of a merger, ISSC and IXU members will be asked at their joint meeting in Taipei at that time to take 4 further decisions. They'll be asked to get the two presidents to finalise a merger treaty and start the legal process of implementing the merger. And that, of course, will be done under French law because both councils reside in Paris. And they will be members will be asked to agree on the date on which the merger should take effect, and where the founding General Assembly of the new body should be. And members will be asked to agree on the process for electing the new Council's governing board during that General Assembly, conducted in the terms of the new statutes that have been provided. Now, all of the paperwork, and it's quite extensive, is put in the papers on that you have access to on the website. This procedure, in fact, the whole procedure of the does not say what people will be asked to do if there's a vote against the merger at this combined meeting. In part, that's because a year ago there was a combined a General Assembly of ISSC and a special General Assembly of ICSU, which agreed in principle to pursue the merger. And while that's an in-principle agreement, like most in-principle agreements, once you've decided to do something in principle, it's very hard to actually undo it when you see the details of what's being proposed. So the procedure is all set out what happens if everybody votes yes, and if there's a vote to go no, then we have to wait and see what happens. At that meeting in Oslo last year, our past president, Cecilia Jalskog, represented IUPAP because at precisely that time I was involved in chairing a meeting of council and commission chairs. The date for that had been set long ahead. Cecilia was, I understand, quite vocal in criticising the details of what was being planned. From her, I understand that the main concerns, which at the time were mine also, were that the matter presented to the members, material presented to the members, did not really make a case that the merged body would be more effective in pursuing scientific and social scientific questions than a close cooperation of the two councils would be. And there was also a concern that we had that the budgetary situation was not clear that there would be enough money to do what was being thought about. I think that the process after that of the consultative process in getting from there to now has been much more consultative than it was before, and we're in better shape in understanding what's going on, but also have better shape in putting input into the process. The situation, in my view, is that if things work well, with goodwill, then there should be a reasonable chance that this will work. In principle, I think it's a good idea, because I do think that in pursuing science for the benefits of society, that you need to have some understanding of what society is doing. And in many of the cases that there are concerns, and that ICSU set up its program on Future Earth, that it now, of course, not just an ICSU program. ISSC has a big role in it, and quite a number of other organisations have a big role in the Future Earth program. Without a significant effort to change the behaviour of society, then much of the scientific work that's been proposed is pretty useless. So it's quite a good idea to work with the social scientists in pursuing those types of goals. So for that reason, I've come around to the view that IUPAP should support the merger and vote in favour of it. And therefore, we're putting that as a recommendation to you. To give you some background about the merger and some information about what the proposals are, Barbara Erasmus, the Secretary of ICSU, is present, and she will provide you with that information. I should point out that Barbara is a physicist, so she's among friends here.
Well, thank you for your invitation. Thank you for your nice introduction, Bruce. So I represent here ICSU, but I am physicist involved in heavy ion collisions at CERN, and I am currently chairing the EPS High Energy Physics Board. So now I will present you very briefly the status of this merger project. Then I will give you some information you may wish concerning the budget, and then we can discuss. So just for those who are not very familiar, I can remind you that the International Council for Science is a non-governmental organization with a global membership of national scientific bodies, around 120 members. What national means, it's usually academies or royal societies, and those include observers, and about 30 international scientific unions like unions IUPAP. I should stress here that we have around 22 members who belong to ISCC and to ICSU, so we have not time to discuss it more in detail, but I will attach the list to my presentation, and then you can check. 20 countries are represented by 2 different bodies, and 2 unions, geographical and psychology, belong to 2 councils. So the process merger is now in progress, and we started at 2015 with a joint working group who was charged to develop scenario on future relations between both ICSU and ISC, and recommended a merger. In April 2016, both executive bodies agreed to propose a merger to ICSU and ISCC members. And last year, like Bruce mentioned already, we had a joint General Assembly, first one, ICSU and ISCC, and members reached an in-principle agreement to continue a merger. So it was green light without any firm commitment from any side. In December 2016, a transition task force and strategy working group has been appointed to develop new status, policies, and strategy for the new organization. And now, in 2 weeks, we will have the second joint General Assembly, and that time, a final vote on a merger on ICSU and ISCC members. So the idea is not new. It was already suggested in 2005 during the General Assembly of XU. The social sciences are important also for XU. Then in 2018 in General Assembly, and also 2018 in the General Assembly of ISCC. He affirms its commitment to collaborate closely with XU. And recently we had an external review in 2014, and then the importance of social science and social science body in the common development are pushed forward as important for major science policy issues. And there we had some exchange of letters between XU and ISSC and agreement to establish this working group in 2015. You have here a nice photo with the working group composition, which has been chaired by Kotso Mokele. It's here, over left. And Kotso was previous XU Vice President for Scientific Planning and Review, and he is also a member of ISCC Committee for Developing and Transition Economies, so he knows very well both Council. Co-chair was Pierre Ricci, who knows both as well. ISCC members were President Alberto Martinelli, Sats Cooper, Vice President and René van Kessel. From the XU side, Gordon McBean, President, Jinhai Lee, Vice President, and David Black, Secretary General. And ISCC support, Executive Director Mathieu Denis, and from the XU side, Heide Hackman, and both are working really closely together. Strategic Working Group is co-chaired by Vice President Jinhai Lee and Sats Cooper from XU and ISCC, and includes 9 representatives from XU and ISCC members. Here you have a list, the names, and the country they are representing. And Transition Task Force is co-chaired by XU and ISCC presidents, Gordon McBean and Alberto Martinelli, and is externally facilitated by Kotso Mokele, including 9 representatives, again, of XU and ISCC. You have a name and the country they represent. And we had also in January this year a strategy workshop. It was a consultative workshop held in Paris with people nominated by strategy working group and external, for strategy working group and external experts. And you have the name of people which do not belong to ISCC, neither XU, but I consider as experts, including UNESCO, Nature. So the draft strategy is now under preparation by this group and is being discussed. The main role of this new organization will be providing leadership in convening, catalyzing, incubating, coordinating international actions. So this is a very general statement, and you have some more other general statements. We can only agree. But what would be important here, what would be important from your side now, is to give your input as to, and start proposing ideas which are close to your field and our physics field. 2 days ago I gave an example because this is the project we are working on related to nuclear cleanup. So this is a project which relates nuclear physics, but also geography, biology, urban health, and all other societal aspects. So this is an excellent example of project we can build together and we could launch together with ISSC, and which is much more closer to our domain. Transition Task Force is looking at the legal structure of a new merged organization and the key organization elements. And this task will come up, is already coming up with new status for new organization and this includes dues and voting structure for all members. What is important here, when members of both organizations will directly become member of a new organization if the merger is decided. And also we are discussing the organization of the Secretariat of the Finance for the next years, and all of this will be preparing and submit for agreement of your representative. Transition Task Force will also propose a time frame from the merger, if decided, for the next year. So next step, this General Assembly in Taipei, very soon, we will vote. And then, if the vote is negative, we stop here, and both organizations continue like they did. They have done until now. If the vote is positive, then we will spend a lot of time, the executive, to finalize the merger treaty, to send it to your representative and our members for final vote. And it will happen first half 2018, probably in April. And the next General Assembly, if it is common, will take place before October, no later than October 2018. And today we have two candidates to organize: Paris, Académie des Sciences, and Japan. And there will be a vote in Taipei for one of those two candidates. I can give you some information concerning budget, because I know that it was one of your worries. So first of all, hosting, we are hosting by the French government in Paris, and we have just signed a new agreement for free use of buildings, and this is secured until 2024, which is equivalent to a contribution of 260 euros. And in case we decide the merger, the ISC staff will be welcomed, and we have enough of room for them. Then we had French government extra support, very flexible. And this support has been reduced from 500 to 100,000 euros. This is not a good news, but we plan to further negotiate with the new ministry now. What will be the income source of this new council? So it will be membership fees and dedicated funds from external sources, and here you have some numbers. So, okay. Sorry. Back now. So we have 42% coming from member fees, and including around 39 national members, 2.6 scientific members, and 0.4 affiliated members. And French contributions 1.5, and dedicated grants 56%. Some comments about this external funding and grants. So you have here the updated list of our current grants, current agreements. So you see that in National Science Foundation from US is contributing to the research in environmental. And this agreement is secured until 2020. Academy of Science in Taipei for a program integrated research on disaster risk, secured until 2020. Swedish International Development, SIDA, this is also ISSC grant, and we are negotiating second phase. And SIDA is in particular contributing to the program for development of Africa and for support of young researchers in Africa, this LIRA 2030. And finally, we have a grant from this International Development Research Center from INCSA. INCSA is one of the activities of ICSU. This is International Network for Governmental Science Advice. Perspective for new budget of this, which is just prospective, because of course if we decide merger, have to sit down, but what is important here, on the left you have the income I have already mentioned, on the right our expenditures. Human resources corresponds to salaries of our staff, and the net result is positive. And here some more information about separate budgets. I don't go through details, but just please note that both ISSC on the left and XU on the right, both organizations have a statutory reserve, which is equal around 500,000 euro for ISSC and more than 3 million for XU. Then it will be, of course, important to continue actions on fundraising. You have already discussed it here. It's not easy this time of crisis. We have already Committee for Finance and Fundraising, and we will create forum of patrons, including people outside from academic bodies, from industry. And of course, all this is strongly related to the communication and outreach strategy and increased visibility, increased within our scientific community, founding agency, with respect to founding agency, industry, and social media. So I can stop here. If you have questions, I will be happy to answer.
Well, thank you, Barbara. Are there questions for Barbara or comments? Yeah, Bill.
Well, this question is probably impertinent, but I will ask it anyway. In a previous discussion, one of the points that was made was that the communities of natural sciences and the communities of social sciences have rather different cultures having to do with things as fundamental as their understanding of the nature of knowledge and the nature of truth. What I'm wondering is, if because of that difference in culture, this marriage doesn't work, what happens?
What happens if it doesn't work?
Yeah, what happens if this marriage falls apart? Because...
Yes, I agree with we have a very different culture. I've been working for a year, at least with our colleagues from social science, and we need a time of adaptation, for sure, because when you deal with psychologists in particular, or even economists, of course you need some time to readapt, but it is possible. So, yeah, we had discussed it already 2 days ago, and the example I gave 2 days ago, it was our executive body. We met several times since then, and I think that we are used to discuss together. And the result of this discussion was even very difficult to accept for ISSC, because we came to a conclusion that it is proposed by our status, new status, that ISSC will be dissolved and absorbed by a new by XU, and then we will change the name of this new organization. So I think the risk is higher for ISSC. And, but I strongly believe that we can, and also I told you that we have already 22 common members, and we have unions which belong to both, these psychology unions and also geographical unions. So people are working together. And the presentation we saw yesterday, the presentations of gender, for instance, this is typically involving social science. The example I give you from nuclear cleanup, we need social scientists to better understand and in a complete way the phenomena which are related to this important problem. So I am rather optimistic, but of course there will be problems, there will be issues. Our structures are not the same and our cultures are not the same. It will take time probably. But my experience is this 1 year preparation and hard work that both Secretariat and both executives has done. So now it's up to all of us to discuss in Taipei, and before, of course, for you to give you input. And what I also ask you is to be proactive. Don't wait a final strategy document which will not take into account what you are interested in, what are your projects interesting for your domain. So please read, please comment, and please make proposal. And then you will have different committees. Now you will have 1 year of discussions we can contribute to, and you will have a lot of committees in which you can participate and you can influence the future organization. This is the only thing I can do. I can tell you, sorry. Of course there are differences, but I think that we will manage. I hope we will manage. But it will be possible if we see our own interest in. So we cannot just follow this motion. They will merge anyway, so let's join. I don't think it's a good approach. A good approach is what will be our role now in this new organization. What physicists can propose in this context, in relation with social science, in relations with other domains, other unions. In this sense, a good example was the grant program, in which we were very successful. So we can work together with other unions, and we can work together with social scientists. But maybe I'm wrong. But if we don't try, we will never know.
Okay. In fact, there are a number of unions in ICSU which are social science unions. So ICSU is not unused to working with social science. Yeah. Kennedy had a question.
Yeah, Barbara, you mentioned yesterday and again today that we should start making proposals. And I just had the question, who do we make proposals to?
To the strategy group. You can address now, you have received this draft, which is under preparation.
Okay.
So this is draft. The name is draft. And okay. It will be discussed, and this is why I emphasized 2 days ago, and I'm still doing it today. Draft. This means you can make a contribution. Mm-hmm. If you see points when your domain is not included, if you consider that you can add something, it is still time. Before Taipei, in Taipei you can discuss in person, and then you will have a couple of months to finalize this document. Okay. Both are draft. So status, this is draft status, and strategy is a draft strategy. Okay. So please influence both. Give your input.
Any other questions? Yes.
In the draft strategy, in section 2, there is a section on the need to defend the inherent value of science. And I'm thinking that if the merger goes ahead, one role that IUPAP might need to pick up is the defense of the value of physics. It's obvious to us. It's very unobvious to most of the public. And physics thinking very often turns up in the thinking of CEOs and leaders of companies. So I'd suggest a role for IUPAP, particularly in this area of defending the nature of science in a sound way against the kind of pseudoscience, or what is beautifully called post-expert dynamics.
Thank you for that suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you for
Any other
suggestion.
comments, questions? Okay, thank you. The resolution, in fact, will come up tomorrow during the course of voting on resolutions. I won't put it now. Barbara, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I indicated before we started on the matters after the tea break that I realised that somehow or other some of the resolutions had slipped out of my presentation. So I want to go back and put those in and show them to you. Unfortunately, we have some time for them. So for a considerable time, IUPAP has been supporting Sesame, and in particular it's been providing financial support to the Sesame travel program. There was a hiccup at the last General Assembly because we didn't get information and reports from Sesame, and so we didn't bring anything to you. And that information flow has since been restarted, and C1 found that it could find enough money in the budget to actually meet the commitments that we'd previously made, which extended into this tronium, the one just finished. But we need to have a resolution that we do continue that support. I think it's now that Sesame is just come into operation. We heard from Sandro Scandalo in Council about the work of Sesame, and which is just about coming into scientific operation. So the resolution that will be put to you is to resolve that you will continue your support of the Sesame Travel Program at the existing level until the 30th General Assembly. And there may need to be a new memorandum of understanding with Sesame, and so you delegate to the Executive Council the authority to conclude any such agreement that might be necessary. Anybody want? Bernard.
Well, first of all, we are very much in favor of this resolution. I want to encourage IUPAP to ask IUPAC to also come up with travel funds, since synchrotron radiation is heavily used by chemists and biologists as well. And in Germany, Rolf Heuer has asked the Chemical Society, and they agreed to pay for the travel funds as well. And even the German mathematicians are paying because they really love this project. I don't know what Sesame has to do with mathematics, but they strongly support it by heart, and they pay 1,000 euros per year to show their sympathy for this project. So maybe it would be possible to encourage the chemists and the biologists worldwide to support Sesame as well.
Certainly, I will take that up in my next communication with the President of IUPAC.
If I may just answer the German proposal. We did that in France, and there is a strong contribution from both the French Physical Society and the Chemical Physical Society.
Okay. Thank you. It will help me in that communication if people who know about individual chemical societies supporting sesame could let me have that information by email.
Thank you.
Thank you. I was going to ask you for comment.
Thank you. The American Physical Society has been administering this program and the partnership among 11 scientific societies and mathematical societies on behalf of Sesame. And we want to thank you all for your partnership and to answer your request for more societies that are outside of physics that are contributing to this program. We can provide you with that list, so when you have the opportunity to raise this with other union leaders, you have that fuel, if that would be helpful.
That certainly would be helpful.
Okay.
The
The American Chemical Society also participates, along with, of course, the American Physical Society. And we all thank IUPAP for its ongoing support.
Any other comments on this? No, thank you. We can keep moving along. You heard yesterday about the program of redefinition of SI, so I don't have to put much of the preliminary here, which is put down. But it was indicated that it would be helpful if this union were to indicate its support of the continued support, been supporting all along, but continued support of the revision of the SI units, and it's there's something left out of there. There seems to be a word left out. Anyway, the time scale is such that it will be agreed to next year and in place early 2019. You saw it on the presentation. And so the resolution that will come forward with the missing word or two is that we strongly support that on the timescale that's been indicated. Any further comment about it? And finally, and this is what sent me looking, because I realised this one wasn't there, and then I had to, and then when I was looking for that I found the others. We heard in the presentation from the Vice President of the Brazilian Physical Society that about the current rather dramatically bad situation for funding of science in Brazil, and budget cuts for funding of science and education as well are under significant threat in many countries. And budget cuts of the order of 10% or so have been quite common, and they're to be deplored, but they seem to be just a drop in the bucket compared to the cut in the research budget that's happening in Brazil. For this year there was a cut of 44%, and a new cut is expected in 2018 of an additional 15%. Coupled with a rate of inflation of the Brazilian reals, that is a significant, very significant problem for science in general and physics in particular in Brazil. So we're asking the General Assembly to resolve to write to the President of Brazil and the Minister of Science, Technology, Innovation and Communications to explain the effects that this large cut will have, and that these will seriously jeopardise the economic future of the country, and after the letter is sent, to publish it on the website. The somewhat concern I have about putting this forward is that I'm quite sure that Brazil is not the only member country suffering really serious budget cuts for science, but this would give something to the Council, something to lean on if it wanted to make statements on any other situation. You heard more details about the background yesterday, and does anyone have any comments they wish to make?
Thank you. I realize that the situation in Brazil is very, very bad. But as I told you, Mr. President, there are another South American countries where the situation is not going well, particularly Argentina. The perspective of the inflation for this year in Argentina is 25%. The proposed budget, increased budget for all science and technology area in Argentina for the next year is only 7%. So that means a cut of about 18% in the money for science and technology in Argentina. And the other situation is that the internal gross product contribution to science and technology in Argentina is only 0.5%. The actual government, in its pre-electoral promises, they say that they will raise the contribution of the internal gross product to science and technology up to 3%, but the reality is that the contribution is going down. So I would like to, it would be very useful for the scientific associations in Argentina that are permanently complain about the situation to have a written note from the General Assembly of IUPAP doing a mention about this critical situation.
Thank you for that. Let me make the following suggestion. This resolution is on the website and let me make the suggestion that you look it up and suggest a form of words to expand it to cover your case, and we'll see what the General Assembly thinks about that when they see it tomorrow. So if you could send me that by email. David.
Can I just ask, being relatively new to IUPAP, do we have precedent for this sort of intervention from the past? Have we done anything like this before? If so, can we get examples of what we've said before?
From my memory, I don't recall us taking this move in the past. But it seemed to me, when I heard about the situation, that there was no disadvantage to IUPAP in taking the move now. So that's why it went forward. That's why I decided to put it forward. I believe ICSU has made some moves like this in the past, but I can't put my finger on exact examples.
I certainly wasn't suggesting that it's something we shouldn't do. All I was saying is if we had examples from the past, then that would be useful. If we could find some examples from ICSU, that might also be useful for us to see before tomorrow.
Any other comments? Yep.
Oh, here. Can I? Okay.
Oh, sorry. I'll take Taiwan first because they have a mic, and then I'll come back to you. Okay. Now keep the mic. He has one.
Okay, I take the microphone first. Sorry, yeah. I think we have similar situation in Taiwan. So the budget cut is right now is becoming a general phenomenon as in many countries. I think on this, except only very few countries, the government still put a lot of budget to the fundamental research. So I think the argument we need to face the new challenge right now. The argument right now, as I saw, is still emphasize the value of the science itself and emphasize the science of research group. That is actually they have a new argument to cut the budget of the fundamental science because of the economic reason. So that's I saw the very positive domain for the merge of with the social science union in the future. So I had worked with the social science, in particular economics, for several years to create a new argument to put the fundamental research of basic science in a positive position in a long-term development of the economics. I think that in particular for the developing country, they like to have a very quick achievement in economic. As long as you have some problem in the budget, you will cut the fundamental research because fundamental research always provide a long-term perspective. So we need some support for social science, some long-term professional, I think, comment from the economics and so on. And we can see the very positive waves in the Nordic country. As far as I know, we spend a lot of the time to make some study. Maybe I'm not a professional like the Nordic country, but they really put a very long-term value in fundamental science and also the social demand value. I think that we, as a scientist, we needed to look out some alliance, some cooperation with the social scientists to create a new argument to the policy, in particular to the public society. And I think the politician will listen to the public society. If the public society, the mainstream, will not change, and they can also not change their position. There's some comment on this point.
Thank you for that remark.
Okay. I think I agree with the colleague from Taiwan. Perhaps the situation in Chile is not as critical as in Brazil or Argentina. Maybe the budget it will be close to the budget of this year, but I think the problem is general. The economic crisis lead to leaders, to politicians, to make cuts in fundamental science. So I think UPAP must extend this kind of resolution of this declaration to enhance the importance of science, basic science, for the development of countries, but also for overcome the crisis. That's the point, I think. I think this is a general problem. It's not only for developing countries or for South America, but of course it affects us more than other countries. But the problem is general, and I think this is an opportunity for UPAP to raise this point.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think I support this resolution to write the letter to the President of Brazil. But in addition, I think that IUPAP could also write a letter to the African Union to support science in Africa, for the development of Africa, and asking to African Union to ask every country member of the Union to put at least 1% of their GDP to the development of science in Africa.
Let me make the same invitation to you that I did to the delegate from Argentina. Might propose a form of words that we can tack onto this, send it by email to me by the end of the dinner tonight, and you'll see it appear tomorrow, and we can have a look at it and decide whether we want to do it all. Okay? That's the way resolutions are always handled. You can make and I should extend that invitation to anyone who wants to think about changing any of these resolutions, that they can make proposals that will be discussed when we bring them up for a vote tomorrow. Okay. Any further discussion? That's the end of the set of things that are on my book, so let me go back through all of this. Oh, whoops. The lunch break. We're a little bit ahead of time, but not too much. The workshop starts here at 2 o'clock. You've heard that the buses go from here to the restaurant after the workshop, so and then return to the hotel after dinner. So enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you very much for the interesting suggestions that have been made during the course of this business. I've got to send it to you, haven't I?